All right, it's one of my favorite times of the year, planting potatoes. So this morning I got up and I cut these potatoes in half, sometimes in thirds, and the eyes were all white this morning, and I've had them in the sun all day. Look at the chlorophyll starting to flow in there. That's amazing how fast that happens. And so this is a Kennebec variety. We're gonna do 4 varieties this year. And so there's a million videos on YouTube on how to plant potatoes and how to get a good crop. I'm just gonna add to that craziness because I've got my own techniques, and you're gonna develop your own technique. And so one of the best ways to do that is to look at other people's techniques and see what fits for you and what doesn't. So I rototilled the beds this morning and got the seed bed more or less set up for it. Now what I did last year, we had a bunch of rabbits. We don't have them anymore. That's another story for another day. And we accumulated enormous amounts of manure. One of the best parts about rabbits is how much manure they produce. And they produce a really unique manure because it's not super hot. And so we put their manure over top of these beds, and I rototilled that manure in. So these beds are fully fertilized now. And I think it's really important to keep this in mind. And I've said it a few times on the channel, but you know, we're potentially gonna see a famine later this year because of fertilizer costs and this war going on in Russia and Ukraine. And in spite of all of that, I mean, globally we're heading towards a phosphorus shortage. Nitrogen is, you know, contingent, at least the synthetic nitrogen is contingent on natural gas through the Haber process. And so as natural gas becomes more expensive, as phosphorus becomes more rare, which it is, the peak phosphorus is not far away, fertilizer is going to get harder to come by. And so my property and a lot of properties have a variety of different biomasses on it, and that biomass is accumulating minerals from the forest. There's a forest, well, you can see right behind me there, and it's really hard to turn that forest into food, you know, as it is right now. But with goats and sheep and rabbits, I can take, and even sheep, goats and rabbits, I can take trees and shrubs and grasses and turn those into meat and manure. And then if I design my property right and I place my animals in the right locations, I can bring that manure into my garden and grow more food. And so what I'm trying to say is that animals are going to be part of the future. This whole vegan fairy tale, because that's really all it is, will come to an end when people realize that they need animals in order to eat. If you look at what happened during the special period in Cuba, when Russia stopped supporting them, stopped sending fertilizer to them, it's a really great case study on what we're potentially going to deal with, but on a much larger scale here in North America. And there's a lot of lessons that you can learn from how Cuba survived peak oil. Peak oil because Russia stopped sending oil to them. And animals definitely are a very important part to an integrated farm. So in order to do this, the first thing I'm going to do, we collected a whole bunch of ash from our fireplaces or wood stoves this winter. I got tons and tons of this stuff. And ash is actually a easy to attain form of potash. And potash is a rich source of potassium. Now, it's really interesting. If we left this ecosystem here alone, it would turn back into forest. And forest ecosystems tend to have slightly acidic soils, and yet the ash from the plants, from the trees, from the shrubs, produces a basic ash. And so where you have acidic soils when the forest burns, it amends the soil to more of a neutral pH. And generally I don't try to amend the pH of my soils. I use compost and organic matter, which will find an optimal balance all on its own. However, I have this waste product in the form of wood ash, and so I'm specifically going to add this to all of my root crops, but I'll probably have enough to put it on all of the beds. And so I'm going to basically enrich the soil with a potassium supplement. It's probably also going to affect the pH slightly because when you add water to wood ash, it creates a caustic or an alkaline substance. So there will be some pH balancing going on as a result of it. But these guys, which are root crops, all of your root crops love potassium. And so there's 3 main macronutrients. There's nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium, NPK. And so when you buy fertilizer, you have numbers N, P, and K, so it would be, you know, 2, 2, 2 or 1, 1, 1. And so that's the amount of each of the, or 1, 2, 4. That'd be the amount of nitrogen, potassium, or phosphorus and potassium. And root crops love potassium. It's really important for them. So your beets, your carrots, your turnips, your potatoes, they're all gonna really benefit from a bit of a kick of potassium. So that's why we're gonna put it onto the bed. So I'm gonna distribute the potassium onto the bed, and then I'm gonna rototill that in, and then we're going to go ahead and plant these potatoes. So let's get to it. Okay, I've got the 3 beds that I'm gonna plant. Actually, there's 4 beds there, covered in ash. And hopefully you got a sense of the amount I'm putting on each of the beds. It's not a ton. We don't wanna flood it with ash, but we need enough to actually work into the soil column. Now I'm gonna light up the BCS, and I'm gonna run it across there. I'm gonna go a little bit deeper just to give me a good soil column to work with for my potatoes. I wanna be able to plant them deep enough and also spread the bed in too, so that I've got the ability to hill them. So let's get this rototilled. Okay, so the rototiller's all ready to go. I'm gonna first start by setting the depth on my precision depth roller. We're gonna go a little bit deeper than last time, but not super deep, so it's still freewheeling right now. We'll give that a try and see how it looks. You might see me in the video adjusting it again. This is gonna create a hard stop on the rototiller, so it's only gonna go to the depth that this crumble roller allows it to go. And it's really easy to adjust this. You just pull a little quick release right here and then move it up or down. So if you want to go all the way down, maximum depth, you move it up to the top. And if you want just a surface scratch, then you go all the way down to here. Actually, sorry, I got that backwards. So that's, no, I had that right. So all the way down to here, and you get just a surface scratch. As you move this further up, the roller comes up, which allows the rototiller tines to go further down. Okay, let's rototill. So here's the difference between this was rototilled twice, and so I just worked that ash in, and you can kind of see all the different rabbit turds in here. So that's going to be our main fertilizer. This bed needs one more work in, just to work the ash into the soil, and so we're going to get all that done. But you really get a sense of how nice that crumble roller makes a seed bed, and so this is going to make an incredible bed for planting our potatoes. So we're going to finish this off now, and then we'll start with the planting, and I'll show you how I do that.
Somehow good for you. Got to get a result or two in the form of something real. Now if you're feeling stressed and not the best and have trouble finding happiness.
We're gonna dig our furrows now. I'm gonna show you this tool that I found last year in Kamloops at a gardening store. I think it was at actually Home Hardware. In fact, I've seen them in Home Hardware here in Alberta too. And so that's the shape of it. It's got this triangular shape. It's got a bit of a rake edge on this side. It's got 2 cutouts right here. This edge is really sharp and this edge is dull. And so this makes an incredible tool for furrowing. So now we're gonna go down and furrow a row all the way down. And once we have a furrowed row, then we're gonna come in and drop the potatoes in. We're going to put a string down the center of the bed here, so we know approximately where to put our furrow. So I'm just gonna roll this out. This is the start of our row. So we're gonna use, it works really good if you have it on a bit of an angle. That's what you want it to look like. So as I'm doing it, I'm going in almost at a 45-degree angle. I'm using the sharp end, and I'm just making a hill. And this hill is what is going to be used to hill the potatoes in about 4 or 5 weeks from now. And you can see this line right here is on the leading edge of the trench, so that we get a straight line. The soil is looking amazing this year. There's this common misnomer that you have to let soil rest. Soil is kind of like human muscles, it doesn't want to rest. It needs to be used, and the way that we use it is by growing plants in it. It's the exudates that are formed from photosynthesis that creates the carbon in the soil, and that's what makes soil brown or black. So the more plants, the more diversity, the more carbon that you get in the soil itself. Okay, so you're starting to get a sense of the furrow that we're going to create. Once this is done all the way down, we'll come back and plant it, and then we're going to label it. We've got most of the row dug now, and so literally we're just going to put these potatoes, which have 1 or 2 eyes on them, we're going to put them about 12 inches apart, and then we're going to just cover them with a bit of soil. And you'll notice that the furrow created a hill right beside it. And so let me just change the camera angle here. So we've got the furrow and we've got the hill. And so we're literally going to just stick a potato in there, eyes up, and then we're going to take a bit of the soil and we're going to cover it and pat it in. And as a result of doing that, the potatoes will grow in the next coming weeks. And then as they grow, we're going to use the soil in the mound to mound around the potato. So once it's planted, we're going to use the soil in the hill to mound around the potato as it grows. And that's going to do some really interesting things. Tomatoes are the same thing. As the stem comes out of the ground, if you put soil against the stem, this is a common thing for nightshades, the stem will actually start to produce roots, and it'll send roots out laterally. And those roots are going to capture more nutrient, but they're also going to set off more potatoes. So we're going to plant this row out, put these potatoes every 12 inches, and then we're going to cover them over with a bit of soil.